Got a sad day at Rotary today. You want to know why? Last official day. Thank you. I actually have enjoyed it, and it went by so fast. So if any of you are ever interested, it's not bad. I see a little grins, but thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be the president of this club over the last year. The last official day is at our installation banquet, which I'll talk about in a minute. Anyway, welcome to the June 27th Rotary. I'm Stephen Hammers, and I'm proud to have served as your president. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. After this, I won't have to be embarrassed of that. Thank you very much. We will have Mark McFerrin do our invocation and Drew Cressman do our pledge and full test. Mark?
All right, raise your hand if you're a former president of this club. Keep them up. There's a lot of you, and you remember this day, don't you? The last day, right? Father, we're grateful for the leadership that's happened in our club over the years through our presidents, and for Steve especially, and all that he's done here in the last 12 months and beyond, really, and will continue to do, which is what this club's about. People that step forward, continue to serve, whether they have an official title or not, but we're grateful. So here we are on a Friday, the last Friday of June. Here again, time does go quick. We want to make the most of the time that you've given us, and we each get 24 hours this day. So I know we all got agendas, we all got things we want to get accomplished and do, but Lord, I know there's a lot of things that come up during the day that we didn't plan on. Some that I believe are orchestrated by you that we should not miss. And so I pray that we keep our eyes open always to see what's in front of us and see people the way you do through your eyes. We're grateful for this club, for the season we're in, the place we get to live, the food we're getting ready to eat, the friendships we have in this room. In Jesus' name, amen.
Wow.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic, stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First, second, third, and fourth.
Certainly hope so. All right, our secretary Jennifer is out of town today, so we're going to have our treasurer Jason Holsey introduce our guest and visiting Rotarians.
I'll start with my guest, Mr. Barrett Gay, longtime friend since University of Tennessee days. Go Vols! Native of Jackson, but lives here in Brentwood now with his wife and two daughters that are 9 and 7. And he's going to tell you a little bit about his company. Thanks for having me, everybody. I work for a company called ATA. We are a multi-state CPA and business advisory firm. I'm a practice leader there of our digital solutions division. I deal with app development, systems integrations, process automation, utilizing AI, things like that. Thank you, Barrett. And then Zach has a guest.
Yeah, I got my good buddy Paul Graham here. We met a few months ago. Me and some guys, we do a monthly cigar night, and so we were hanging out on Wednesday, and I was like, "Man, you got to come to Rotary." He's got a big heart. He works to optimize businesses and just trying to grow the business, and then use all that money to help give back and kind of spread the wealth around, and really have a strong heart with the Lord. And so, just happy to have you here, Paul. Yeah.
Welcome.
No, go sport. Okay, all right.
All right, thank you, Zach. And then Rod Freeman is not here, but a guest of his, John Thompson, that's a recurring visitor.
recurring visitor sounds like something that you don't have, but thank you for having me.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And last but not least, I have Mr. Jim Bonds that's going to introduce our speaker.
Well, I was going to introduce him later.
Okay, then I'm done.
You know what? First time, happy bucks in 3 weeks. Jared.
All right, who's happy? Who's happy over this table? Ema, come on, somebody. Here we are. Here we are. $100. How about that?
That's all the other one I got. Just want to say last week was pretty good. I got my 30th anniversary with my wife, and we got confirmation. Our daughter, instead of being 6 hours to fly in or 10 hours to drive, is going to be in Birmingham. So we're looking forward to that.
Tucker?
As you know, I'm in the 30 under 30. I've officially raised over $15,000 for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So thank you to all of the helped, and looking forward to adding more. Thanks.
Or?
Not today.
I think this is the first time I've been here in about 7 or 8 weeks. A wonderful week over on the Queen Mary, and I have an unusual makeup. I attended a Rotary Club meeting on Queen Mary in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, wow.
With
cool.
four Germans, 2 Australians, 5 Americans.
Wow. That's cool.
Another 10 days in Scotland, 5 days in Portugal, came back, and then a week out in Phoenix. And then 2 weeks to recover from all of that. So, glad to be back.
Great to see you, Don.
Awesome.
Hi, Sinclair.
I have a granddaughter that was 7 years ago, was a preemie at 2 pounds. And due to God's miracle, we found that she had a hole in her heart. Not that we just found it by accident. Providence, I think. Wednesday morning, they opened her up, which was a traumatic thing to open up a little 7-year-old. But she's had many prayer warriors praying for her. She has had a very successful surgery. The actual hole was larger than what they even anticipated. And the amazing thing is she's probably coming home today.
Yeah.
Go ahead and praise Mississippi State.
Mississippi State. Hey, Jim Bonds, you know, a legend in Ole Miss basketball history is here. And ESPN, I'm just going to say 167 days from now, Ole Miss will be in the college football playoff. There you go.
All right. Anybody else?
Give him his money back.
Any rebuttal? Any rebuttal? On one.
Anybody else over here?
Got him. One more. Larry Kane.
I just wanted to follow up on Bobby's about his granddaughter. Caroline's a neighbor of mine. She lives 3 doors down from me, and man, we prayed. But she's a great little girl. She's one of my best friends, and I was just so proud when I heard she's coming home today. So that's wonderful news.
Thank you, Jared. Appreciate it. We're actually early today. First time in several weeks. Well, I'm going to introduce 007 to you. Jim Bond. Jim has visited our club on several occasions over the years. He's actually a graduate of Mississippi State, right? Okay. No? You sure? Okay. Oh, it's a school up north. Well, both my boys went to Mississippi State, so I got to call it school up north. He has a BA in broadcast journalism. He's actually going to introduce our speaker today. Jim has actually worked as a sports reporter and anchor for local TV stations in Huntsville, Kansas City, Memphis, Nashville, and along the way, he produced several programming specials for the Royals, Kansas City Royals, 2 Super Bowls, World Series, Big Ten Conference. He's basically done it all in his career in broadcasting, which is why he's introducing our wonderful guest today. So I want to have Jim come up and introduce our guest.
And the amazing thing about that, Steve, all that in the previous century. I always get excited to come to speak to you guys because you're so positive. I hear good stories like Bob's granddaughter and things like that. So it's always a pleasure to be here. Remember this voice? We're coming to you live from the Martin Center at Brentwood, Tennessee for the weekly Rotary Club. Sports has come a long way since Brent Musburger did that almost every week when he signed on. It was a cliche for him. But we still love our sports, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But to get us started and make this introduction short, I want to test I call it Stump the Rotarians, okay? Hold your hand up if you know ESPN is obviously an acronym. What are the words behind ESPN? This is easy. Over here. Close. Who else? You got it. Entertainment and Sports Programming Network. Secondly, we know that ESPN and CNN really was the paradigm shift, the first two 24-hour networks, one news, one sports. And when they started things, it changed everything. Which was first, CNN or ESPN? It is. They debuted September of '79. CNN came along, Ted Turner's project in June or July of '80. All right. And finally, does anyone know why ESPN at all has always been based, still is, in Bristol, Connecticut, of all places? You ever been to Bristol? Any thought? No one knows to this day. It's always baffled me, but it has something to do with a guy who put a $9,000 advance of his MasterCard to reserve a satellite transponder to get ESPN going. And he had like 40 days to come up with the other money. But anyway, it's a great story. His name was Bill Rasmussen. He'd written a couple of books on the formation of ESPN. But basically, they already had an uplink in Bristol, Connecticut, and they liked the proximity to New York City. So that will be our home going forward. So, all right, enough of that. I want to introduce you a friend and neighbor today. Carol Mayer is a native of Illinois, attended the University of Illinois at Champaign well, you played golf. I didn't ask if it was a scholarship. It doesn't matter. Yeah, so she's an athlete. There you go. And if we have time, I hope we'll have time for Q&A. Whatever you do, don't ask her about her 2 holes in one and when they occurred. But she went to college in Illinois. Right after college, went straight to ESPN. She worked in the Bristol office and eventually came back to Illinois. And she and her family relocated to Tennessee a few years ago. She's married to Nate Voronyak, and they have 3 lovely kids. Listen to the names. Hope, Valor, and Lion are their 3 kids. And you know that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree because I'm seeing their 3 kids run up and down the sidewalk almost every day, kicking, hitting a ball, or just running up and down. But we're happy to have her with us today, and let's give a good Rotarian welcome for Carol Voronyak.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jim. It's an honor to be here, and I love that we opened with prayer, and so that will allow me to really kind of sprinkle in some more details into my story here. But yeah, so you can see here we're part of Church of the City in Spring Hill, and so that was from Father's Day. There's Hope, she's 9, and Valor is 7, and Lion is 5 years old. So yeah, so today I wanted to share my story, but I also wanted to weave a theme through when I started at ESPN. It was let's see. Okay, so 2 decades ago. That's when I graduated University of Illinois as Miss. Yes, I. That's right. Yeah. So I was on the golf team there. If you do any deep research, I helped out the team picture probably more than I did with the with my scores. My scores weren't great, but it was really a wonderful chance to be a part of the Student Athletic Advisory Board and the athletic board, which was where I met somebody who not only knew somebody, but was very close. And he was the goddaughter of somebody who was actually the head of production hiring. So I said, he had asked me, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'd love to work for a place like ESPN. And I was studying broadcast journalism. I wanted to start off on air, but realized that I was okay on air, but I was, anytime there was any sort of adversity, Mr. Jim knows, you can't necessarily let your cards show if you're fumbling in the moment. And so I got a chance to interview for a position at ESPN, a production assistant position at ESPN. And so at that point, I had brought my resume tape, which was like Carol Mayer, J352, Journalism 352, my resume tape that had a wonderful clip of me also doing weather in addition to Illini News. But he basically said, look, hold on to it. And if you want to chase this dream, ESPN is not the place to start. We are huge and we don't want our folks making mistakes on air. So if you want to pursue this on-air dream, I urge you to not take any job if we're to offer it to you and move on. And so it was at that point where I really had to let that dream die and say, okay, I'm going to start off behind the scenes. And so that was actually my initial ID badge at ESPN. And so that was a fun memory to see that. And so I wanted to take a trip down memory lane as we go back 21 years. So gas, 188 a gallon. And I looked up milk and it's very similar. It was 315 a gallon. So we're similar on milk. President George W. Bush, minimum wage, $5.15 an hour. And I started off at $9 an hour at ESPN. So I was making $20,000 and they told you there's a long line of people. If you don't want this position, it's okay. There's a long line of people who do. So it was pretty much, you took what you got for $9 an hour. But I moved out I was born and raised in Richmond, Illinois, and moved out to Bristol, Connecticut right after I graduated. And what I wanted to sort of hit here is that as I was looking at this, 2004 and when I started was a very pivotal time for sports media. Facebook had just started and it was actually called The Facebook. If you've seen this, like the social media experience, it's very, very interesting that. So I remember being in a test group at University of Illinois, starting on Facebook that in 2004. But if you can think back, there was no smartphones yet. There were cell phones, but it wasn't the immediate smartphones that we're all used to carrying right now. All media was essentially consumed either on a newspaper, the radio, or linear TV and cable TV. So we didn't have this all-consuming sports media alerts that we have now. And so even with YouTube, we're still a year away from YouTube, 2 years away from Twitter, 3 years away from the iPhone 1. Okay. And that's what I like to think of ESPN's glory days. I really think from 2002 to 2010 or so that was ESPN's heyday. They were pretty much the only show in town that was able to offer the sort of, they had the money to buy the rights to show the highlights, and there were local and regional networks as well, but they didn't have the national competitors like that started in 2010, 2011, 2012, FS1. And then they started building out NBA TV, NFL Network. Those started coming alive. But Dan Patrick and Stuart Scott, loved them. They were awesome to work with, and they were just someone recently had asked me about Keith Olbermann. And I like to say, like, whatever you think it is with somebody like him. Yes, absolutely. But Dan was awesome. So he said he's the smartest guy. And I said, yeah, he thinks he is. So, right. but my role, and somebody had asked me, what was the biggest thing that changed from when you started in 2004 to now, where sports media is? And I really like to think, if I could whittle it down to one thing, and I would say it would be the invention and the integration of the smartphone, and how media is now able to be consumed at any, you could watch a game right here, you could watch a clip right here, you could watch it in your bed. So rather than before, when families would gather around the TV and you'd sit there and you'd watch a game from start to finish with the advertisements, now you can watch it condensed, you can flip through it, you can watch it on your phone, watch it clips. And really, my other point here too, with not only with media consumption, but office expectations, right? Like, before we had cell phones and smartphones, you could be in the office from 8 to 5, and then you could go home at 5 and maybe be left alone until you came back the next day. But as soon as people had access to you when you had a cell phone, the expectations of when you would be available just started getting longer and longer and longer. And pretty soon, now people are pretty much accessible 24/7 if they choose to be. And so that's what I saw change from when I started in 04, and then very quickly after I was given a BlackBerry. Okay, now we can reach you on your BlackBerry, and then they upgraded to an iPhone, and so now you're able to work across time zones. There's a lot of pros to being accessible and to finding access to people, but the cons of being able to set boundaries in your life, and that's one of the things that led me to leave the industry, is just because it was a really unsustainable pace that I found myself in, waking up. It wasn't ESPN's fault that we had 3 kids in 4 years, but I waking up, parenting, waking up, looking at my phone, answering emails, then parenting, and then a nanny would come, and I would work from, let's say, 8 to 5. The nanny would leave. I would parent again from 5 to 7, put the kids down, and then crack open the laptop again and work until 7 to 10:30. And you didn't see a picture of my husband, but I really love my husband. He's awesome. And I didn't really get to spend a ton of time with him. So that was what led to me moving out of the industry for a bit. But before we go there, I was a talent producer at ESPN. I started off as a production assistant, so running the prompter for people like Linda Cohn or Stu or Dan Patrick, getting coffee, printing scripts, and then talent producing, which was finding the athletes and the celebrities, coaches, authors, guests who were unpaid to come on the shows. And back in I would say the mid 2000s, from like 2006 to 2008, before that first crash in 2008, money was plentiful at ESPN. So we would roll trucks, meaning send equipment to people's houses to get a live interview with them, instead of doing like a phone interview or a Zoom interview, which is much more common now. That's free. Rolling a truck could be $2,500, $3,000, $4,000, depending on where they were in remotely. So I did that for several years, and then I was moved over into contract negotiations and talent development. So instead of the people who were just guests on ESPN, I was now in charge of finding people who would be paid by ESPN, work for ESPN, reporters, NBA analysts, anchors, digital folks who appeared on different. We ran. There was 5 of us, and there was 485 talent at ESPN. So if you want to slice it even, which it wasn't, we were all responsible for about 100 different talent contracts and negotiations. And that was not only with individual talent, but some people had agents or managers or publicists So trying to find the right way to access people in order to negotiate contracts and make sure that they were receiving the feedback that they needed to be great TV. So that sort of led into what I'm doing now, but as we look sort of at the present day sports media consumption, what I was talking about earlier, and sorry, this is gonna go. You guys, I'm Carol. Just I'll say hello later. I promise. We now have immediate information, instant light clips, and I still am default by saying like, oh, I help people get better on TV, but it's not just TV now. There's lots and lots of content that's pushed out on social media. So I for one, before I will turn on the TV for the day, I'll have been on my phone for probably an hour, maybe even more, consuming news either through various social channels or different websites, different apps that I listen to, podcasts. And then the live sports experience is so different from when I started. I remember going to games, pre-smartphone era, and everyone would be so into the games, watching the games. And now you can even see on TV, and it's really sad, but you go to a game and everybody's either got their phone up because they want to show people that they were there. I'm at fault too, or you see them looking at their phone and there's a live game right in front of you, which is just like, wow, this is crazy how it's changed. But I'm working with a broadcaster who's doing some minor league Cubs play-by-play, and he went out to Japan when the Cubs were in Japan in the preseason, and he said that actually in Japan it's very different. The respect for the game and the respect for just baseball in general is very honorable. You won't see people with their phones out, and it's very interesting to see how different countries and different cultures consume sports in a live game experience. And that brings me, so a minute, before I get to this point, I want to talk a little bit about being at ESPN in that unsustainable pace. So we're in 2021 now. My family had moved from Chicago to Tennessee. I think I can say this with most people here, but Chicago was broke, cold, and crime ridden. And with these 3 kids, it was just not the place where we wanted to be raising our kids. And so we had looked at, I wanted to pick some cities that ESPN could potentially say yes to. And so we circled Nashville, Charlotte, and Dallas. And my youngest son was born March 1st of 2020. And then the world shut down 2 weeks later. So because I had that maternity leave to think about what would it look like for us to leave, my husband was like, let's go check some places out. So we went to Nashville was the first place we came. And the first place we came, we looked in Franklin and we looked in Mount Juliet. And the budgets for Mount Juliet and Franklin we were right on the edge of what we thought could be a reason to leave Chicago and provide a nice life. So we took a separate trip back 2 weeks later. Now I'm still on maternity leave, and ESPN has no idea that we're even doing this. This is June. This is 5 years ago. Actually, to the day that we signed our contract on where our neighborhood is. And we moved forward. We found a place in Spring Hill that was a new build situation. And we just thought, this is something we felt very much so confirmed by God that this was where we were supposed to move. We didn't know anyone. We knew no one. And so trying to tell people like, we're going to move to Tennessee. How did you find Tennessee? Why Tennessee? And we just felt like this was where our family was supposed to be. And so I can remember calling, it was to the day 5 years ago. I remember calling my boss and I said, hey, I'm not allowed, because again, not to be super political, but like I wasn't vaccinated. So like I wasn't allowed in Bristol, and I wasn't allowed in Chicago. My son was really young. I was breastfeeding. I was just waiting for the information before moving forward. But I'm not allowed anywhere. Do you care where I live? And he said, no, not where are you thinking? And I was like, Nashville. And he's a conservative guy, and he goes, Nashville. He's like, red state. And I said, yeah. I said, I'm going to the promised land. Okay. So he said, he said, you know what? I will approve this. And if anyone has an issue with it, they can take it up with me. Now, hopefully he was let go 7 months later, which was not that man, Rob, I'm sorry. It wasn't that, but we moved here, and I continued to work for ESPN for 10 more months. And it was at this point, this is when, so he got let go. We had a new woman put in place that was our boss. And we had another guy who basically just checked out. So that 485 talent was now essentially split between like 3.5 people. And at my tipping point, I had 58 negotiations that were happening at one time. And Nate and I were talking about what would it look like if I left the industry. And I will let you know, like ESPN, I knew that it was always a nice wait to be like, hi, this is Carol calling from ESPN. It's really nice to be able to say that and have people return your call. But what it really was is it was a crushing wait for me. And it was unsustainable. I was not able to do it. And honestly, my time with the Lord was really starting to shrink to just maybe like a prayer before dinner, Bible verse of the day, pretty rough, pretty weak. But there was about 3 weeks there where I was waking up at like 3, 4 a.m. And at this time I wasn't getting a lot of sleep anyway because the kids were so little. And I remember saying to my husband, man, I keep waking up and this is like supposed to be my sleeping hours. And he's like, well, maybe God's trying to get to you because you're so busy. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I promise you, I was like asking God, I said, God, is there something that you want to show me? And it was a very, very clear vision. I'll never forget it. It was me on a path, a wooded path, and he was at the other end of it. I couldn't see him, but it was very, very much so. The message I received was that he was there, and on each side was these distracting things, a crying baby, a phone call, work drama. And the message that I received is this is not about vaccine. This is not about just different racial things that were happening at ESPN. You need to leave because I need you to obey me. And I am proud of you, Carol. Like, and I came out of that vision like, oh my gosh, like the creator of the world is proud of me. And he wants me to trust him in this and letting go of what was, a big part of my identity for a long time. And so I remember just bawling and telling my husband, okay, this is it. I have to leave. And I called my best friend, and she was up here. Was she up here? I think. Oh, she'll be up here in a second. It's Molly Karam. She is the host of First Take with Stephen A. Smith. And but anyway, so she gets it. But yeah, so 4 days later, I gave my 2 weeks notice, and I had never quit anything in my life. I had always played a sport till the sport ended and moved on. And so I remember calling my boss at the time and just being like, I don't know how to do this, but I know I'm supposed to be done with my time at ESPN. And they were like, no, you can't. And I was like, yes, I can. And so we agreed, instead of 2 weeks, we agreed because they said, cool, it was September 15th. They said, can you work till Christmas? I said, I can't. I know I have to, I need to be present for my kids. And I know this is something that I need to do. And so we agreed for me to stay 5 weeks. And I finished out, I checked off every one of those 58 negotiations. We got them all done. Boom, 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 boom. I worked in that 5-week period. I probably worked harder than any other time at ESPN. And I spent a lot of hours throwing hours at that machine. But got it all done, was away from the industry for about a year away, but still while I was raising the kids with my husband, my husband's business was taking off, and I really had to build up kid stamina. So this has nothing to do with sports media, but now you're just kind of getting my story, because I think sometimes it's easier to relate to people who you can hear about. But while I was out of the industry, I was still getting calls from agents and on-air talent like, "Hey, would you take a look at my reel?" Reels are like basically online resumes that you can watch and to see, okay, this is how you sound in this setting, or this is how, here's an intro that I did for this game or that game. So I used to do that when I was at ESPN making a salary, but then when I was no longer receiving income for that service, it started to become very clear to me that, okay, if I'm going to do this for somebody, now I'm not either getting a workout in or with my kids, or now I'm not sleeping. And so after a few months of this happening over and over and over again, I really feel like the Lord downloaded a business plan for me of, here's how you can do this as a consultant. And we'll go forward to the okay. Yes. Oh, there's Molly. Okay, yeah, Molly and Stephen A, and then we got Romo and Nance. I feel like they're those. Anybody listening to, who's listened to Jim Nance for a long time, just with the integration of Tony Romo, has really made him come alive. I love listening to that tandem. I love listening to Tony's passion and hearing how he's able to bring Jim alive for the football games too. But I felt like the Lord gave me a formula here with inform, excite, entertain, and then we'll discuss some three different other things where we can let's see. Oh, yeah, he gave me a name too. Leading the way talent, leading the way for my business, leading the way. ESPN used to be we were a pay for performance company, and they did it like a railroad. It was kind of silly. But if you were doing well, which they want it in the bell curve, this was how they would determine bonuses. If you were doing well, you were right on track. If you were doing, pretty well, you were moving ahead. And then the coveted spot that everybody wanted was leading the way. So that was like 5% of people got leading the way. So that's where leading the way talent comes from. And it's a reminder to me that Jesus is leading the way for me. So I was able to get this consulting company off the ground and provide services where now, right, I help people sound better on air. I have people send me clips of their on-air performance, and I assess them and give them written feedback. And then we also do a consultation call where they can ask me anything about the specific feedback, or maybe they have an agent question, or they want to know salaries, or I'm basically an open book for them for 30 minutes. And I put pricing around it. And then I have a picture of Dirk up there, Dirk Nowitzki. I developed a power course, a sports broadcasting power course for these athletes who were on the court or ice or field and now want to go behind the mic. And it's been awesome. It's just a 2-session power course, and then they can do more. But I know these guys, like Dirk doesn't have any time. So it's a repeatable model where we spend 2 hours, 1 hour one day, 1 hour the next day, to go over basically everything that they need to know before they set foot behind a mic. Some people have had maybe a little bit of experience, and some people are very fresh. Dirk has been interviewed many times, and he's done some public speaking, but he's going to be, you'll see him if you watch Amazon Prime, he's going to be one of the tenants, the studio analyst with Steve Nash on Amazon Prime. And so they got a recommendation to come to me, and we did a power course, and my little kids got to meet him via Zoom, and it was great. So but there's also 6 elements that I tried to hit on, because you can put your thumb in the air, right, and say like, oh yeah, that person's good on TV, or that person's really interesting to listen to. I love watching their social clips, but why? Okay. And so they all actually and full disclosure, this is a modification of a presentation that I actually did for my daughter's second grade class. It has nothing to do what I think of Brentwood Rotary, but it was for career day, and so I added more today. But yes, these all start with the letter C. So some of this is where it gets a little elementary, but it's okay. So I like to rate people based on their confidence and how are they showcasing that confidence across their clip. How is their posture? How is this is where I can go into where I can talk about even people's dress or their body motions, or are they jumpy? That's how that comes across, whether it's conscious or unconscious, but that really affects on the person who has the mic. We are going to trust that person. We're going to trust that person's right, correct, fair, all these things. Are they telling the truth? And if they don't have that confidence or that command to be in charge, we're going to flip the channel, right? Like, or we're going to go on to a different website. We've got the goldfish mindset now, right? Like we're going on to the next thing. I find myself sometimes where I'm trying to get something done, task focused, and it's like I get an alert and then this happens and this happens. How are we going to stay if I'm working, I don't work with Jenny Taft, but I think she's really good. And how am I going to stay and listen to her? She's got a command that makes me want to continue to pay attention. Okay. They need to express that care. And oftentimes you'll hear maybe somebody's voice. If they're talking in a monotone way, it doesn't really seem like they care about the outcome. But when you hear somebody their voice starts to have inflection and they're engaging with the audience or with their booth partner, that's when care comes out. So we got confidence, command, care, connection, building that connection with audience and with booth partners, saying something relevant, being entertaining, so that inform, excite, entertain. Most people can inform well because they have the resources to be able to spit stats, or they can call a game like they see it. Excite, that's with the care. And then entertain, that's the one area where not everybody is as advanced, but I think there's ways to prepare. And what I try to do with my clients is I ask them how they're preparing to inform, but I say, how are you preparing to entertain? Did you hear something that was funny the other day that you think might have a universal appeal? Is there a pop culture reference or a song lyric that you might be able to weave in? Those are the sort of things that I like to hear when I'm consuming sports. So I try to encourage them in that area. Conversational is number 5. So being able to have a voice that you want to continue to listen to versus the affected broadcaster voice that we have sort of graduated from. That the affected broadcaster voice is not going to get anybody fired, but I don't necessarily know that that's going to get people hired in this sort of environment. A lot of the people who've had these positions for a long time and the legends have those voices, and so now ESPN or John Boy Media or whoever it is they're looking for people who are different, people who sound like now we have the access to not only hearing our friends and family on the phone, right? Like, who the people that you follow on Instagram, what they sound like. There's even like an influencer type of cadence that is prevalent amongst maybe people that you listen to. Like if you're listening to stories like hey guys, here I am. So it's interesting how the evolution of voice and delivery has gone from the booming voice to a more affected influencer type, and then even the like Mr. Beast, if your kids watch that, like the guys that are like, hey, they're very over the top, and it's very hard to watch because it's very overstimulating, and I hate it so much, but it works. And so there's different ways that we are now consuming this content. It's very in your face. So, and then the last one is curiosity. I really like to encourage my clients to go in that, point out something if you think it's interesting, the audience is going to think it's interesting. And we're not there. We're not there in person. I can't see that the ball went off his left finger, and I can't see that he's limping on the sideline, or she went to go get a word of advice from the assistant coach. Tell me those sort of I like to use observation and curiosity sort of interchangeably, but anytime I find that my clients are extra observant, I always give them a star saying like, hey, that was really interesting to me, and I'm going to remember that. So, all right, so we kind of went from linear TV and before smartphones to how are we consuming it now? I do not know what's next. I feel like you can talk about what's next. But I know that what we're going to need to do in order to sort of stay ahead of the curve, or at least with the curve, is to monitor what sort of technology is out there, what sort of new apps are being built to consume content. Always, we're still humans, and I still think storytelling and the way to tell memorable content is going to be important for us to continue to be hireable, likable, all of those C's. So focusing on that storytelling and I think personalized content, as AI and algorithms and things that I can't even talk more on, but we're going to start to see more personalized content, even if you see in your different social channels, like, you go to the For Me page and it's like, yes, I'm interested in that and that and that and that. How do they know? I'm sure that the sports stories are going to be more aggregated to sending you things that that you're going to want to learn about. And if not, then you can just swipe away and on to your next. But yeah, I'd love to answer any questions that anybody has.
So mine's kind of a joke, but also real. So inside NBA on TNT, just, with Shaq and Kenny and all them transferring over to ESPN. Do you think ESPN will ruin it, or will it still be good?
Oh man, yes. You know what? I know that there's been an emphasis. ESPN has always pointed to Charles Barkley as somebody who's like top shelf in terms of entertainment. ESPN's also owned by Disney, so there are certain things that they may have gotten away with on TNT that might not be. So we'll have to see how much they can push the lines with Disney, and but I'm excited that ESPN and Charles specifically are partnering. So I guess the jury's still out.
In your evaluation of the talent, can you comment on maybe the top 3 people that you would feel that you played a role in moving along in their career, whether it's ESPN or somebody like Mike Trico at NBC?
Yes. So I can say that I know that if you know of Marcellus Wiley, he was a football player. He played for a bunch of different teams, but the Chargers. Back in 2007, I booked him on First Take, and he just really came alive, and we had him come back, and then ended up, this was before I was in the hiring role, but I know that I played a big part in helping him in his career move along. There's a woman, Malika Andrews, who is the head of the NBA show. And I hired her as a Chicago Bulls beat reporter, and she had no TV experience. But we realized shortly after that she really came alive on TV, and she did quite well. And I definitely added some emphasis to the executives to say like, hey, this person is underpaid compared to her peers, and we got her a nice raise. And then, she continued to move up and on. And then let's see. You know, it starts to bleed together after with all the, but definitely Marcellus, definitely Malika, and I'm still, there's a woman named Courtney Cronin who I work with now who's done Bears beat reporting, and she's on Around the Horn. And so I love being able to help people in the earlier stages. A lot of these folks who are at ESPN, you know, are mid to high range. And so there's several people who I'm working with here in the Nashville area who are up and comers. Lucas Penzica and Will Bowling are both on 104.5, and they're both going to be part of the Titans radio broadcast. So that was really cool to see people who I've been coaching moving along. And then there's a young broadcaster who, his name's RJ Taylor. He's actually from Brentwood. And he's gotten more and more play-by-play opportunities. So I really like to take the wins kind of from the lower to mid range. Those are the ones that stick out a little bit more to me. But yeah, long range answer. Oh yes, yeah, sure. Courtney Lyle, she's from Brentwood, right? Yeah. I ended up she was doing some one-offs for ESPN, but then she got an agent who was at CAA, which is pretty much the top broadcast agency. There's CAA Sports, and then there's CAA. And I negotiated her contract with her agent Kevin Bellaby. So yeah, Tennessee is definitely pumping out some good talent. It's been nice to be. Oh, Emily Proud is she from here, I think, too? Emily Proud. We've worked together. But at this point, and this is going to sound like a brag, so take it for whatever it is, but at this point I have 12,000 numbers in my phone. So if you need to get to somebody, you can ask me, and I can probably find you. But there was one person recently that he was an umpire, and his name is Cowboy Joe West. And his agent is from like in the Nashville area. His name is Marty Martell. And he had passed away, and he was on John Boy Media's. We didn't even get into John Boy, sorry. But I'm now doing talent producing for John Boy Media. They do a lot of lip reading, and they have the number 1, number 2 baseball podcasts in the world right now, Talking Baseball, Talking Yanks. And so I do celebrity talent producing for them. And they gave me a dream list of 185 talent. And so, of course, their dream list is like, can you get us Jeter? Like, no, I can't. I'm sorry. Like, how about Tom Brady? Like, no, like Michael Jordan? No. Okay, I'm not going to be able to get you them. But they do. I had a comedian on. I got him Rob Lowe, which was nice. Handsome Rob Lowe. And there was an umpire, Cowboy Joe West. I was talking to a friend of mine who's writing a book on the Cubs. And he was like, hey, is there anyone you can't find right now? I said, yeah, Cowboy Joe West. And he's like, oh, Jesse knows him. It's Jesse Rogers, who covers the Cubs for ESPN. And so I texted Jesse and I said, hey, Cowboy Joe West, you got a number? He said, yes. And so I figured Cowboy Joe West might not be a text guy. I figured he was going to probably be a phone guy. And so I called him, and he called me back. And so now I'm undefeated on finding people. But so if you need to find somebody, I can help you. But anyway, okay, probably last question. Yes.
All right. Well, I have a quick comment and then a question.
Okay.
You can tell by the demographics of our club that we're friends with Will Bowling's parents, Ronnie and Ann.
Oh, great.
But we're excited about Will.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
That's great. But because of our age, I think a lot of us look at the TV and go, slow down. It wasn't one of your 6 C's, but do you ever have to tell people to just kind of shift gears a little bit so that they can be more clearly understood
Sure.
on air? Because I find it's a problem. And I want to know if Stephen A is going to run for president.
Oh my goodness. Oh man. So you actually just gave me another C. I should add clear or concise or both. How about there's another C. So slow. Okay. Yes, for sure. I know. And I probably sometimes when I get a little excited, I even tend to speed up. So apologies in advance if that was hard. But and Stephen A 2028. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see what happens with him. But thank you so much for having me today. Hope you just have a blessed weekend, and I just hope for just much success for the Brentwood Rotary Club. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Carol.
Yeah.
Carol, we'd like to give you a little gift. And if you don't mind, if you can sign this, we read this to first graders. So just sign it in the front and just mention a little bit about what you talked about.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, before we go, quick announcement. Larry, will you say something about the golf tournament? I forgot to do that at the beginning.
Concise my 3 minutes. He said, you got all the time in the world, don't worry about it. Real quick, we're gonna meet 18 days, and we're gonna meet 3 weeks from today, right? That'll be our next meeting. 8 weeks from that is our golf tournament. We have 21 sponsors out right now who we have not heard from, who were sponsors last year. You here, if you know any of those or have any of those, please call them. And if you were here last week, were you not elated with that meeting and how good it felt as we gave out $30,000 to people, all of which came from the golf tournament? So I'd like to double that next year. Let's give them $60,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not? All you gotta
do is ask.
All you gotta do is ask, right? So let's use these 3 weeks while we're not gonna be meeting. Put yourself to work. Your captains will be calling you because I'm going to be talking to them. We're going to sit as teams in 3 weeks. When we come back here with your sales teams, we'll be sitting that way. We're going to push it hard from there on. So let's get started now, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain, for letting me do it.
Thank you. Don't forget, no meeting next week, July 4th. The very next time we get together is July 10th. That's our installation banquet. Please come. You've been getting some emails. You'll get another one. Make sure you RSVP for the July 10th banquet. July 11th, the next day, we're not meeting, obviously, because we had our meeting on the 10th. So otherwise, we will see you July 10th. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Carol, you could be at mine if you wanted to. I'm in.